I've been to some pretty wild places before, but this is definitely like on up there with craziest places I've ever been. Now I'm here in a neighborhood in Newberry Springs, California, and this place is a result of very poor planning. Because they built this in the middle of the desert around sand dunes, the sand dunes move around and the wind reshapes the surface. And now this neighborhood is mostly under the sand dunes. So we are out here looking for anything sticking out of the sand dunes. And we're looking to get photos today on the Q3 43. And I've done a lot of photography with this camera over the past week, and I'm at the point now where I feel safe enough to give you guys a full review, my impressions of this camera. Now, if you remember, I did a first impressions video when this camera was launched, thanks to Leica San Francisco loaning me the camera for a bit. Now that I've had this one on loan for a week from my friend Rudy, I feel like I'm in a place now to tell you everything that I can about Q3 43 photography. But first, we gotta find some stuff to shoot out here. I mean, that is, I don't know, I find that a little disturbing. It's weird. Think about the fact that like some parent bought that for their kid. And now it's sticking out of a sand dune. It's pretty surreal. Man, this is nuts. I mean, there's literally a dune coming out of this house, and there's a dune blocking this garage. It's so crazy to me that like this was hopes and dreams of a family at one time. If you're new to the channel or just like new to me, you may not be aware, but a lot of my photography is kind of like human remains. Actually, that sounds really, really bad and dark. Not human remains, but the remains of humanity. I shoot a lot in ghost towns, the northern plains, especially love that area. Out here in the desert, I mean, I do a lot of this kind of photography, but I've never seen a spot like this. Because this wasn't abandoned in like the 20s, like I could have grown up here, you know? It's really wild. Probably use that word too much. Wild. It's wild. Wild. Everything about this place is wild. It's wild. Wild. So maybe now would be a good time to start talking about the Q3 43. The first thing I just want to point out is that it's a Q, which means that the build quality is amazing, the experience is awesome, and it is the gateway to the M. And so if you want like an M autofocus, this is it. It's what the Q is. It's no different than the Q3 or the Q2 or the original Q before that. It's the same experience. It's a Q, and the Q is a fantastic camera. And so as someone who's previously owned Q cameras, specifically the Q2 for quite a while, I just made a video recently about how I miss it. As someone who owned a Q2, this is a very familiar experience when it comes to just the way the camera operates. And so if you've had a Q, whether you have a Q3 or a Q2 or the original Q, the Q3 43 is going to be a familiar experience. But if you've never had a Q before, this will definitely be probably one of your favorite autofocus experiences ever with a camera. Next up, let's talk about the lens on the Q3 43, and we'll talk about the focal length separately from the lens. Just want just the lens for a minute. This is a APO lens, which means apochromatically corrected. So just to put this into like the most simplistic of terms, when light comes into the lens, an apochromatically corrected lens will take the red wavelength, which always gets separated, which is why you get chromatic aberration, and fix that inside of the lens. And so you don't get any of that chromatic aberration. And so an APO lens has been corrected in that regard. And that's what this lens is. It is an APO lens. And Leica's APO lenses are incredibly expensive, and yet there's an APO lens built right into the Q3 43. The kind of ongoing joke with the Q is that you buy the lens and get the camera body for free. This lens has a ton of that Leica pop, you know, what they're famous for, that Leica look. This lens 100% has that look. Just, you put it at f2 and pop, it's there. It has the Leica look all day long. It should, because it's a Leica camera. And you know, you take that lens and you couple it with the same sensor, or the same resolution at least, that you have in the M11 line, that you have in the SL3, and you've got this 60 megapixel monster with an APO lens that is incredibly sharp and literally perfect, and you can crop really, really far. Now, like the original Q3, which is a 28 millimeter, this is also true. It has that same sensor, and you can also crop in really far, but starting at 43 is just gonna give you even more room. And with that ability to crop in, you basically have 43 through 135, and it's crystal clear, sharp, looks fantastic. I had to come back to the car for a bit because I brushed up against one of these like desert brush cactus things. I don't know what they are, but it put like 100 spurs in my foot, and I had to come get them all out. It was a little painful. I was gonna show it to you guys, but then I didn't want to end up on OnlyFans. So, you know, we're good now though, we're gonna keep walking. Now let's go back to the lens for just a minute and let's talk about the 43 millimeter focal length. I'm not sure how I feel about it. In theory, I should absolutely love this because I love shooting 35 millimeters and this is very close. I also love shooting 50, again, very close. In fact, 43 is a split difference between a 35 and a 50. And honestly, it's basically what your eye sees naturally, like in terms of things front to back. I made a video a little while ago about focal lengths and my whole thoughts on, you know, the three common, which are 28, 35, and 50. And this, you know, is on the top end of that, on the tighter end of that. So it should feel very natural. And again, it does feel very human, very natural. But as a photographer, like I said, I'm just not 100% sure how I feel about it. I feel like that you would really love this in certain styles or genres of photography, but you might struggle with it in other styles and genres. So who would I say the Q3-43 is for, just in terms of thinking about photography styles and who the photographer is? I think this camera would be best suited for posed work, meaning that you're shooting people, you're posing people. Like if I was a portrait photographer or a wedding photographer or family photographer, I don't know if I would find a better autofocus camera than the Q3-43. It could also be a really good everyday camera if you are a 50 mil everyday person, which is probably like maybe a third of the photographers out there. I'm just going to assume that a third of all photographers choose 50 as their everyday lens, and the other 2/3 would choose, 28 and 35. So for that 33% of photography, and God, I love making numbers up, but for that 33% of photographers, this would be the perfect everyday autofocus camera. I think if you do landscapes or some type of like documentary style photography, it's possible you could love this camera. I would say for me, I do a lot of landscapes and I do documentary style photography. That's what I'm doing today. It's kind of a mix of both. In a big sprawling landscape, I really do love shooting 50. If I go to Yellowstone, 50 millimeter is typically my wide lens. For more of that documentary style, you can get kind of like close or far to the subject, then 50 is a great focal length that has a very natural humanistic compression to it and just looks really good. But if you're just like a landscape photographer who wants to get big scenes, I think it might be challenging to do that with the Q3-43. I would also say that unless you're a 50 mil street photographer, you might not love street photography on the Q3-43. Part of that is the focal length, but there's another reason we'll get to in just a minute. Pro tip for you, when you're shooting in the desert or any sandy areas, try to minimize moving any parts of your camera that are moving. So for instance, it's way better to just take a wider lens, focus at infinity, or use an autofocus camera so you're not like moving things, because if sand is on something, you want to use a puffer. Like I'm going to do that when I get back to the car when I'm done, and really blow all the dust I can off my gear. If I was using my M11 and I was trying to like constantly be focusing, if there's any sand just on the edge, and then I start spinning the focus, ring or whatever, there's a good chance that sand could get into the lens itself. We don't want that to happen. So for that reason, don't want to use many moving parts when you're in sandy areas like here. After I made that OnlyFans comment, I started thinking about how the first scene that I filmed for this video was me putting my flip-flops on. So now I'm like, do I cut that? This house is completely buried. And I almost wonder if it's multi-level, because that chimney is looking like, maybe this is the top half. I don't see the fireplace. It's definitely low, but there's more roof down here. So I'm wondering if I'm standing on a multi-level home, because the only part sticking out is a small part, which I'm thinking was maybe like an attic or something. I mean, it's crazy that that's a tree. It's the top of a tree. Same with this. This is the top of a tree, completely buried. All right, now let's state the obvious. This camera is not perfect. I think its biggest selling factor as a Leica is also its biggest weak point, and that is the autofocus. You know, I had mixed results with the autofocus. I would say like, I'd give it a solid like B+. I'd be comparing that to like my Sony kit that I use mostly for video, but very sticky, predictable autofocus would be like an A+. Leica's Q3 43, definitely like a B+. But if we compare that to the SL line that I had before, and I never had the SL3, which has much better autofocus, but with the SL2S, in video especially, it really struggled to stay sticky with the autofocus. Now, I'm not an autofocus guy. I mostly shoot the Leica M, and there's a good chance that maybe it can be set up in a more like efficient way than I was using it. I tried every mode. I settled on zone whenever I was out doing street photography in Las Vegas. I was using field as I was out here and kind of, you know, just moving the square to what I wanted to be in focus. And I tried wide. And so those were the two that I settled on. And, you know, maybe my issue isn't with the quality of the autofocus, because it is quite good. Again, B+ is a great grade, but it was more just maybe about using autofocus in general. With autofocus, you kind of have to like predetermine what the camera is going to focus on. Otherwise, you're letting the camera do the guessing at what you want to capture. And for fast moving, just, you know, out there trying to run and gun, I don't know if autofocus is the best way. I typically will zone focus when I'm in that mode, like street photography. But again, going back to who's this camera for, if you are doing posed portraits, like family, wedding, that kind of stuff, oh my God, like this camera is perfect for that. And autofocus honestly is perfect for that. So I would love to hear your thoughts. You know, is this the right camera for you? Is 43 the right focal length, or is 28, you know, a better option for you? Let me know what you think about the Q3 43 below, if this is the camera for you or not. If you're ever in the desert of California, be sure to check out Newberry Springs. This place is bonkers. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. And if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to like it, subscribe if you're not subscribed. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.